Hello everyone, welcome back to Twilight Tales. Tonight we bring you a story that will claw its way under your skin, twist your dreams into nightmares, and leave you questioning the faces you trust the most. This is The Shape-Shifting Spirit. I'll begin the story now. In the crumbling town of Willow Creek, the legends were older than the bricks of the courthouse and the grave markers in the cemetery. They spoke in hushed voices about a spirit, a malevolent entity that could wear the skin of anything it touched. It was called the Murmur, named after the eerie whispers that accompanied it wherever it went. It had no true face, no true form, just hunger. The legend warned, never answer if you hear your own voice calling from the woods after dark. It started with a voice. Samantha Wells, a recent transplant from the city, had always thought of herself as skeptical. Ghosts were fairy tales, horror movies were cheap thrills. When she moved into the old farmhouse on the edge of Willow Creek, she laughed off the warnings from her neighbor, a wiry old man named Mr. Clive. "Keep your doors locked after sunset," he said. "And if you hear something scratching or calling, ignore it." Samantha smiled politely but didn't believe a word. Her first week was uneventful. Long days of unpacking, fixing leaks, battling spiders the size of her palm. The nights were quieter than anything she'd ever known. A stillness so deep it felt unnatural, until the seventh night. It was just past midnight when she heard the voice. "Sam? Hey Sam, it's me. Open up." It was her own voice, perfectly mimicked, calling from outside the front door. At first she thought it was some kind of joke, maybe a recording, a prank. She crept to the door, her heart hammering in her chest, and peered out through the peephole. Nothing. Only the black fields swaying in the wind and the distant shimmer of the tree line. Then, tap, tap, tap. Low, patient, knocking, fingernails, not knuckles. "Sam, don't you recognize me? Let me in." Her skin crawled. Every survival instinct screamed at her to back away. She double-checked the locks, then ran upstairs to her bedroom, locking that door too. The knocking didn't stop, and it got louder. Bang, bang, bang. The voice changed. Still hers, but wrong. Stretched, guttural, as if her vocal cords were being pulled too far. By 3 a.m. the knocking stopped, but the scratching began. The next morning, Samantha found long gouges in the wood of her front door. 5 parallel scratches, deep and splintered, like something with claws had tried to pry its way inside. She called the local sheriff. He was a broad man with a gut like a beer barrel and a face carved from suspicion. "Looks like a bobcat," he said, but he didn't sound convinced. "Bobcats don't talk," Samantha whispered. The sheriff flinched almost imperceptibly, then muttered, "Best keep your doors locked from now on, ma'am." He left without offering any real comfort. The days blurred into paranoia. Every night the entity came back. Sometimes it was her own voice. Sometimes it was the voice of her mother, pleading and sobbing. Once, it was the voice of her childhood, best friend, begging for help. Each time the knocking and scratching grew more frantic, more violent. Samantha stopped sleeping. She boarded up her windows. She stopped going outside altogether. And still, and every night, she heard it. One evening, delirious from exhaustion, she made a mistake. She answered. "What do you want from me?" she screamed through the door. There was silence. And then, in the softest, sweetest version of her voice, and it said, "To come home." That's when it got inside. It started small. Little things moved when she wasn't looking. A cup left on the kitchen table would be on the floor. The lights flickered even when the power was fine. And she kept catching glimpses, reflections, in mirrors that didn't match her own movements. Once she passed the hallway mirror and her reflection stayed behind, grinning. Samantha decided she couldn't stay another night. She packed a bag and prepared to leave Willow Creek forever. As she rushed down the stairs, she saw something that stopped her cold. Standing at the bottom of the stairs was herself, but wrong. Its arms were too long, its head slightly tilted like a curious dog. The skin seemed to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. The thing smiled, and Samantha saw that the teeth were not human teeth at all, but thin, needle-like spines. It opened its mouth and spoke in her voice. "Leaving so soon?" She screamed and bolted back upstairs, locking herself in her bedroom. That night it didn't bother knocking. It simply began whispering through the door. A constant stream of voices, friends, family, even her own voice pleading for forgiveness, until she broke down, sobbing and clawing at her ears. At dawn, Mr. Clive showed up. He must have seen the broken windows and the smashed front door. He dragged Samantha outside, half crazed and covered in scratches she had made herself. "You're lucky," he muttered, shoving her into his battered truck. "It didn't finish bonding with you yet." As they sped away, Samantha turned back to see her house. Standing in the upstairs window, waving, was her double. Only now, it was no longer trying to look like her. Its face sagged like melting wax, and two coal-black eyes watched her with glee. Mr. Clive took her to the church at the center of town. Deep in the basement, they locked her inside a circle of salt and iron. The old pastor performed rites Samantha didn't understand, chanting in some ancient tongue, burning herbs that made her cough and cry. The entity screamed too, from inside her own mind. It begged, it threatened, it promised ecstasy and endless life if only she would let it in fully. She resisted. For 6 days, she stayed inside that circle, barely eating, barely sleeping, while the thing clawed at the walls of her mind. And on the 7th day, it was gone. Or at least that's what they said. But Samantha knows better. Even now, years later, when she passes by mirrors, she never looks too closely. Because sometimes, just out of the corner of her eye, she sees herself grinning when she's not. She hears her voice whispering from dark closets, from under the bed, from the trees at the edge of the park. "Sam? Hey, Sam, it's me. Let me in." She doesn't know how long she can keep it out. Not really, because the Murmur, it's patient, and it already knows her better than she knows herself. This was the shape-shifting spirit on Twilight Tales. Thank you for listening, but if tonight you hear your own voice calling from outside your window, whatever you do, don't answer it good night. Sleep, if you can.